Greetings, folks. Our guest today is Dr. Gary Flandro. Dr. Flandro is a professor emeritus at UTSI, although he's still teaching one course. And we want to, he was heavily involved in the Voyager 1 and 2 programs. And they've been around so long, we're going to have to get refreshed on what that's all about. And he was been heavily involved since the beginning. And so we want to find out what that's all about. And also toward the end of the program, he's now in his semi-retired state chief engineer of a local high-tech company, Gloyer Taylor Laboratories. So we'll find out a little bit about that. But first, Dr. Flandro, welcome. And
thank you.
Let's take a few minutes to get a sketch of Gary Flandro, the person.
Okay. Well, I've been around for quite a long time, as you can probably tell. Turned 83 last spring. Still kicking, still working. I'm not going to stop working.
Yeah.
I've always been.
You're still a kid.
Oh, I'm still a kid. But I'm very interested, always have been, in things that fly, especially space flight. I got into that when I was very, very young. Of course, all the comic strips and Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon, all that kind of stuff really caught my attention. And my mother gave me a book when I was just 6 years old for Christmas that showed, it was an astronomy book for kids, but it showed the planets all lined up. And I said, gosh, it looked like we ought to be able to go from the Earth and just go through the solar system. I thought that would be a wonderful thing to do. That may have sowed the seeds for some things that happened later.
Yeah.
But at any rate, so I studied engineering and was very interested in a lot of things. I was interested in robotics for a while. This was before robots were even, and no computers really.
You're back in the 60s, right?
Oh yes,
right.
In fact the 50s was when I started school. I had a wonderful book that was written by Wernher von Braun that nobody remembers anymore, called The Mars Project, where he was laying out how you could actually fly to Mars with a manned program. It would have been an enormous program. He got the government interested. Of course, he was interviewed by everybody on Earth. The Disney people were interested in all this stuff.
He was.
And that, all these things are playing into my interests, so I'm watching it really closely. There was no NASA at the time. There wasn't a NASA. We didn't have any space program at all, but I was watching all of these things going on. So I studied mechanical engineering, and with aeronautics, I love things that fly, so I got into that. And this career goal was governing just about everything I did. I got a chance to go to the California Institute of Technology for graduate studies, which I did. Got a master's degree and then a PhD. While I was doing my PhD program, I had a lot of opportunities to work with the Caltech Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which then, by that time, had become part of NASA. And of course, they were interested in anything to do with new missions. And so this got me going in this direction I think you probably want to explore.
Right. Okay. Well, very good. Let's take a short commercial break, folks, and we'll come back and go into Voyager.
All I have to do is think about what I was physically before and what I am now, and I don't ever want to go back to that original situation.
The overall mission of the rehab team is always what is best for the patient and how we can facilitate maximum potential from every resident.
Well, the most important thing to me is that I'm allowed to do whatever I want to do,
Everyday Miracles, Life Care Center of Tullahoma.
Tired of paying for monthly telephone service, expensive long-distance bills, and all those crazy taxes? Are you sick of spending money on telephone equipment, maintenance contracts, and service calls, all for a phone system that shackles you to 100-year-old technology and your desk? Stop it. It's time to ship your phone system to the cloud. What can the cloud do for you? Bring together remote offices, workers, and employees in the field. make sure that you'll never miss calls by delivering them to multiple devices. Modernize faxing by allowing multiple faxes to be sent and received at once. And deliver to email. Get your voicemail messages instantly through email too. And take advantage of an endless supply of customizable features. Host My Calls can deliver the cloud. All of this technology with low upfront costs and not one penny in capital expense. It's time for a phone solution you'll truly love from Host My Calls. Call the number below.
We're talking today, folks, with Dr. Gary Flandro, who has been heavily involved in the Voyager 1 and 2 missions for a great number of years, and so we want to find out all about that. He recently was at a special event in D.C. Celebrating 40 years worth, and so we want to get into that. Tell us, Dr. Flandro, it's been so long now, a lot of us have forgotten, I guess. Tell us about what the basic mission of the Voyager was.
Okay, the word Voyager wasn't even being used for this at the beginning when I was there. I was a graduate student at Caltech, and they gave me a chance. I wanted to get a little rest from my thesis work, so I went and worked at JPL. They gave me the job of looking for new missions for JPL. They were concentrating on the Mars exploration, all unmanned stuff at JPL. They wanted some new missions. They said, we haven't got anything going for the outer planets, so why don't you go and see if there's any practical way to do outer planet exploration. At that time, the scientific community didn't even think you could do that. It would be too difficult. It would take too long to go to Jupiter and the planets beyond. So they said, my boss said, why don't you go and see if you can find a practical way to do this? So off I went. The first thing, of course, you do is you look to see where the planets are going to be. And I know, yes, and when. And I noticed some really interesting things. I won't give you all the details, but I noticed just by making drawings of where the longitudes of the planets were and so on, over a period of time. I looked for about a 30-year period after that time. That was 1965. So I just wanted to see where things would be in that time period. And I noticed there that there was a time in the 70s, the late 70s, when all of the outer planets, that's Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and even Pluto, were over on the same side of the sun, which is a rare occurrence. And so that there was a possibility of not just going to one of the outer planets, but 4 of them in one flight: Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. I saw that, and so then I began the hard work, which was to see what the trajectories would look like, what the launch windows would be for those outer planet missions. And I found that if you launched in September 1977, you could do this. And the beautiful thing about it is that each time you go past one of those outer planets, this 4-planet mission, I can gain a tremendous amount of energy, which cuts the flight time tremendously. If I was to go to Neptune directly, it would take probably 30 years, okay? Which is going to be way too long. The government's never going to be supporting that kind of a job, right? But I found that I could get to Neptune in about 7 or 8 years by going Earth, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, using what's called the Slingshot Method, where the gravity of each of those planets pulls you along and adds energy, makes you go faster. You can do some amazing things with that. So I got that, and then the hard work started. I went and worked out all the details so I could tell exactly when you had to launch, and all of the details, what size of a rocket we would need for a given payload. Had to work out all those details, and I was just doing that. Nobody else was working on this but me, and I said, here's what we can do. Took it to the chief scientist at JPL and says, we can do this mission. And he was really excited. And in fact, he did a news release the next day, didn't even mention my name, but JPL has got this new mission. We're going to call it the Grand Tour, he said. The Grand Tour. The Grand Tour of the Outer Planets. So that's how it got started. So I was right there at its birth, okay? And then for years after that, this was in 1965, we had to have this mission ready to go if we were going to actually do it. in 1977. So we got 12 or 13 years or so to develop a spacecraft to do this. There wasn't much time because this opportunity only comes about every 175 years. The newspapers got a hold of that, and some people said, oh, look, the planets are all lined up. It's going to come in 1977, the planets are all lined up. Good heavens, there's a Jupiter effect that's going to affect life on the Earth with all these planets all lined up. Their gravity fields are going to affect life on the Earth. Of course, this all got into the newspapers, so I'm afraid I'm responsible for that. Anyway, so at any rate, we got this mission started. It became kind of a football. The NASA headquarters didn't even think we could do this. They gave us money to build a small spacecraft, the Mariner spacecraft, and so the name changed from Grand Tour. Now, Wernher von Braun was involved at the start. He wanted to build a great big one. He wanted to really do it right, using his Saturn V boosters that they were using for the lunar flights. Okay, for the Apollo project. He had these Saturn V's. He wanted to use those and really do this thing right, where we would send a lander from each one of the planets, and an orbiter or a lander if possible. And he was really into it, but that got nixed because the Saturn V got canceled, and we won't go into the details. There are a lot of politics in this, as you might imagine.
Sure.
So, anyway, so that's how it all started. It finally went through a lot of different steps where JPL was given enough money to build a spacecraft just to do Earth, Jupiter, Saturn. We got the money to do that. They started on this small job. Me and my boss, we wrote memos and so on, describing how this should be done and that the lab should take this on as an important project, which they did. But they didn't have enough money to do all 4 planets. But those JPL engineers are absolutely incredible people. They knew right from the start that they needed to do all 4 planets. So they built that into what became the Voyager spacecraft right from the very start. Dr. Pickering, who is the director of JPL, said we just don't say anything about that because they didn't want to get NASA headquarters all upset.
Yeah. Okay. And so you were able to do that, and you launched in
September 77.
Yeah. What did you use for a rocket, by the way?
Okay, we used what's called a Titan III, which is a big rocket, mainly used for satellite launches by the Air Force and so on.
Right.
It could handle the payload that we needed.
Okay, so you were able to, and how long did it take to touch all 4 of them?
Okay, it takes about 4 years between each of the planets, which is an important fact. I'd like to mention that, because something happens important each 4 years that you're on this mission, which makes the government very happy. So the politicians, of course, because of the 4-year presidential time period and so on, this is very important in getting your funding in place.
Sure.
So this all worked out quite well. And finally the mission was going, and it had a new name, Voyager. As you know, tremendous, the scientists were all on board by that time. A tremendous amount of experimental capabilities, and photography and everything. Remember now, this is 1960s technology, actually early 70s technology, but it was amazing. The computers that were used on those spacecraft are not as good as your watch. If you've got an Apple Watch or something, the computer in the watch is better than they were using for those spacecraft.
Yeah.
Anyway, and off it took in September. There were 2 spacecraft, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. Voyager 1 was intended to go by the lab people, JPL, to go the full 4-planet mission. Voyager 2 started first. In Voyager 1, they targeted so it would go out of the solar system. They wanted to see what the space looked like out of the solar system plane, the plane of the solar system. So those 2 missions were underway, and there it was, and we watched for the next several years, and here I am very interested watching all of this, because I had been there already. See, I flew this in my mind.
Right.
And I knew exactly what it was going to look like, and here it is, taking place.
How long did it, well, I think we're going to need to take a short commercial break, folks, and we'll come back and pick up on what we gained out of this.
Russell Barnett Hometown Auto Rental has proudly served your auto rental for over 30 years. Check out this huge selection to choose from. Small car, mid-size car, full-size car, crossover vehicle, SUV, minivan, pickup trucks, 12 and 15 passenger vans. Whether big or small, Russell Barnett Hometown Auto Rental has them all. Stop by our 2 locations to serve you, Tullahoma and in Winchester. And remember, my question is, why rent anywhere else?
It's time for every family and business in Tullahoma to go green and recycle. Tullahoma Public Works makes it simple and easy to recycle. Just place your recyclable materials, paper, plastic, aluminum, and cardboard beside your garbage container on the same day your garbage is picked up. Your recycled materials don't have to be in a fancy container. Recycling is not only the right thing to do, it makes sense. Recycling pays. Paying to bury our garbage costs each of us. Please do your part. Let's go green, Tullahoma, and recycle.
It's your trademark. That's something special everyone knows and remembers. It's your thing. It's made holidays special for decades and summers unforgettable for the entire neighborhood. It's made everyone laugh every single time. Don't let illness or injury keep you from doing your thing. The rehab team at Life Care Center of Tullahoma is ready to help you live well.
I'm meteorologist Leland Statham from the News Channel 5 Weather Center. Look to Jim Fuller and crew for local news night here on Channel 6.
We're talking today, folks, with Dr. Gary Flandro, who is Professor Emeritus at UTSI and has recently attended an event which we want to hear about, celebrating 40 years of the Voyager mission, and he has been heavily involved in that since the beginning. So tell us, Dr. Flandro, about when the mission started and how long it took, and then tell us a little bit about what we gained from that made the whole thing worthwhile.
Surely. The spacecraft, of course, left mid-September 1977. There were 2 spacecraft I already had mentioned.
Right.
These were, one of them, let's just concentrate on the one that did the 4-planet, what I call the Grand Tour mission, and because that's the one that gave us the most scientific data. By the way, these 2 spacecraft have now left the solar system.
Right.
So these are the first man-made objects that have actually left the solar system.
Right.
And they're still working, they're still communicating with the spacecraft. But at any rate, these were heavily instrumented, so we could learn a lot about the planets themselves and also the satellites of the planets. We knew very little about those before this mission. We learned a tremendous amount about the satellites. We even saw that there were some satellites that had volcanoes. No one ever expected that Io, that's a satellite of Jupiter, had sulfur volcanoes. Amazing stuff. And Europa is an ice world. It probably has oceans, liquid water oceans under the ice. So that's a prime place for looking for life outside of the Earth. But we learned an enormous amount. It's probably been one of the most successful missions that NASA has ever flown in terms of the scientific material that has been produced.
Yeah.
So, and as I say, we did passages at each one of the planets, got very beautiful data. If anyone is interested, all you've got to do is go on the NASA website. You can see all of the information that was gained there. Look at the pictures. They're beautiful. If you've never seen them, you should look at them.
Okay.
Saturn being my favorite, the rings.
Oh, sure.
And at any rate, and it took
we're
roughly...
all fascinated by the rings around Saturn, yeah.
Yes, okay. And it took the mission that was actually flown, the Voyager 2, took about 12 years because they had planned it in such a way that we could look at each of the satellites of those outer planets and get close-up pictures of all of those in the process of the flight.
Okay.
So that's how that all went. Tremendous scientific.
The Grand Tour itself lasted
about 12 years.
12 years.
Yep.
Okay. And then it left
it's left the solar system.
The solar system, and has been going ever since. And,
yes.
And it's still working.
It is. Some people ask, where is it going to go? And actually, they didn't try too hard, but it's targeted so one of them will go past the star Sirius. But don't hold your breath because it's going to take about 40,000 years before it gets there.
Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about the event in D.C. recently you attended.
Yes, I was invited to attend since I was the person who got this whole thing started, so they wanted me to be there. We had some very interesting people. Some people will remember Anne Druyan. She worked with Carl Sagan, who did the Cosmos series.
Okay.
And of course, he was very interested in Voyager. He was involved in some of the scientific stuff, but they devised, in fact, they talked NASA into allowing them to make a record called the Golden Record. Each of the spacecraft, each of the Voyagers carried this golden record, which had sounds of the Earth, people saying hello in all the languages of the Earth, pictures of all the important things, music from Bach and Beethoven and Chuck Berry even. They had all this stuff on this beautiful record, and each of this, but nobody, we don't know if anyone will ever pick them up. I sort of doubt that myself, okay?
Okay. All right, and your event lasted, what, 2 or 3 days?
Yeah, 2 or 3 days, yes. We had it was a televised event. I think if you go to the NASA website, you can probably see that television event. Because we had the director of JPL was there, or the chief scientist for the Voyager mission. All of the people who were involved in this thing were there. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed meeting all these people that I had worked with in the past.
And one of the things we, I think, haven't mentioned that one of your, and I think maybe one of your panelists were particularly interested in the possibility of life on one of the other planets.
Yes, there was a young woman there. She was working at Caltech and just getting her PhD degree, but she was given the job now of working on missions that would actually look for life, what places we had discovered with the Voyager missions. One of them being Europa is a good target because of the possibility of liquid water. And Titan, that's a moon of Saturn. Another moon of Saturn, Enceladus, has a possibility of life as well.
Yeah. And it's worth remembering, folks, that the Grand Tour, we're talking about Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Did I say Uranus right? Or Uranus?
Some people have different ways of saying it. Yep.
Okay. Well, with that, let's find out a little bit about. I see you're still teaching a course at UTSI.
That's right.
But in your spare time, you're now involved with a local high-tech company.
You can call it spare time if you want. Yes, yes. Gloyer Taylor Laboratories. This was started by one of my students. Started it, and they've been working for a number of years on really high-tech stuff, mainly interested aerospace things that have to do with space flight and so on. Lightweight tanks for rockets would get much better performance, and a whole lot of things. We've had jobs with DARPA, with NASA, with the Air Force, the Army, the Missile Defense Agency, you name it. We've had projects going with them, and we do right at this moment have a number of very interesting things going on at Gloyer Taylor. Paul Gloyer is the president of the company.
Right. And you are chief scientist, actually, aren't you?
That's the role I play.
Yeah. Yes.
Yep. Chief cook and bottle washer. Right?
Okay. And are you? I notice there's quite a bit going on out at the center in connection with hypersonic flight.
Yes.
Are you involved in that?
I've been involved in that a lot. I did a lot of teaching at UTSI in hypersonics, and at Gloyer Taylor, we are interested in various aspects of hypersonic flight. Yes.
Yeah, that's a coming big thing.
Yes, it is.
All right. We should mention, by the way, that you got recognition from the British Interplanetary Society.
Yep. They were the first ones to acknowledge that something important had happened here. That was way, way back when. That was in 1970, I guess that was. Yeah.
Right.
And they gave me an award. And then more recently, NASA gave me the.
They finally got around to it.
Finally realized that maybe they better acknowledge that something had happened there.
Yeah, that was in the late 90s?
1998. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And you're fairly widely published, I noticed. Well, we're coming up toward the end, and I want to make sure that we recognize that Dr. Flandro was involved in this very important mission and was involved from the very beginning. In fact, his work at JPL and Caltech set the possibility for
Could I add just
the
one thing
mission
in
that
there?
they took.
A lot of people might not agree with this, but I think it's true. If we hadn't been there at the right time and done that, I don't think that mission would have ever flown.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have much time to do it. You know.
Right.
After
right.
we just saw we could do it, only about 10 or 12 years.
We had another confluence of the stars there.
You got that right, yes.
Okay. Well, with that, folks, we'll take another short commercial break, and we'll have to wrap up.
Russell's got your truck, man. Russell's got your truck. Chevy, Ford, and Ram, man. Russell's got your truck. With the best selection anywhere. Russell's got your truck.
Keith Barnett here at the Russell Barnett Automotive family, and man, do we ever have your truck. 4 brands, hundreds to choose from, all at year-end discounted prices. So with so much to choose from, my question is, why buy your next truck anywhere else?
Russell's got your truck, man.
Get your news first, fast, and free with your news leader on 6 every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday nights at 6, 8, and 10 p.m. Local weather, sports, community calendar events, and a comprehensive look at the latest news stories and news makers as only a video news broadcast can do. Get it first, fast, and free with News Leader on Channel 6, your local information network.
We've been talking today, folks, with Dr. Gary Flandro, who has been heavily involved in the Voyager program over the years, and also is now involved heavily also with a local high-tech laboratory. So, Dr. Flandro, I want to, is there something that you'd like to say to the folks, maybe the young folks in particular?
Yeah, I always like to take the opportunity to let younger people know, the ones that aren't sure about where they're going in their careers and whatnot, that there is a tremendous opportunity. The problems that are still unsolved are just mind-boggling, and the people that have to solve those problems are you. And I've just learned myself, that if you just stick with it, learn all the things that matter, get all the mathematical and physical tools and all those things, and live a good life, and you can do amazing things if you just keep your interest up, keep working. Don't let anybody discourage you. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't do things, because you can. So that's my message to you.
Good. And make sure in the process that you stick with the studies that will allow you to do that.
Absolutely.
And that gets us back to the STEM business, science, technology, mathematics, and what, English?
Yep, English too.
Right. So those subjects are very important. So with that, Dr. Flandro, I want to thank you for taking time to join us.
Sir. Yes.
It's been very interesting and very enlightening, and good for us to remember things that happened 40, 50 years ago that have been very significant in our learning about the outer space, the world out there around us. So with that, folks, let's thank Dr. Flandro again for taking time to join us, and we will thank you for inviting us into your parlor, and we'll see you next time.